Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and today we have a fan request, and it is for the 2006 animated comedy horror family mystery Monster House. Here is your trivia question for today. What was the name of the arcade game that Skull plays in the pizza place? The answer will be at the end of this video. So at the start of our film, it's just a nice autumn day in 1983 in Mayville, Wisconsin. Everything in this neighborhood seems to be perfectly fine, except for one thing, one particular house. Living in this house is a cantankerous old man named Mr. Nevercracker. Mr. Nevercracker is always yelling at kids and stealing whatever ends up on his lawn. Then one day, Mr. Nevercracker's neighbor DJ is playing with his friend Chowder when they mistakenly lose Chowder's ball on Mr. Nevercracker's lawn. When they go to try to retrieve the ball, Mr. Nevercracker comes out again chasing after DJ. Unfortunately, there is a bit of an accident, and Mr. Nevercracker is taken away in an ambulance. It's around this time that DJ and Chowder make friends with a girl named Penny. The three kids know that there's something wrong with this house, but how can they prove that this nice, unassuming house is actually a terrible monster? This film is actually one of the only motion capture animated films that has an entirely original story and is not based off an existing source material. The director of the film is Gil Keenan, who you might know even a bit better now as he directed the Ghostbusters Afterlife movie and is also going to be directing the sequel. Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg were both executive producers for this movie, and in fact, this is the first time in 16 years that the two have worked together. The last time they did so was in the movie Back to the Future Part 3. Dan Harmon was the head writer for this movie, and you may recognize him as he was also the creator of Rick and Morty and Community. The three main character children in this movie are DJ, Chowder, and Penny, and they are played by Mitchell Musso, Sam Lerner, and Spencer Locke. Mitchell Musso you might recognize from Hannah Montana as he played Oliver Oaken. You might also recognize his voice as he plays Jeremy Johnson in Phineas and Ferb. Sam Lerner has appeared on The Goldbergs as Jeff Schwartz, but he also did the voice of Zack Saturday on the cartoon series The Secret Saturdays. Spencer Locke has popped up here and there in television and movies, but her best known roles are probably in this film and playing the character of Kmart in two of the Resident Evil films. Now, most of the rest of the cast you might recognize a bit more. For instance, Mr. Nevercracker is played by Steve Buscemi. Kathleen Turner does the voice of Constance, and if I were her, I would have requested to also make the noises for the house. The character of Z is voiced by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and as you can tell, they kind of made her look a little bit like her actress, which also means we had the potential of a very different looking babysitter, as all of these actresses were also up for that role. Zoe Deschanel, Angelina Jolie, Fergie, Mary Steenburgen, Patricia Velasquez, Lisa Ann Walter, Judy Greer, Rachel Wise, Rocio Banquels, and Renee Zellweger. Jason Lee did the voice of Bones. John Heder did the voice of Skull. And apparently, on the very first day of filming, while doing the motion capture, John Heder actually tripped on a wire and broke his ankle. Now, here's a bit of interesting background for the characters of Skull and Bones. They're actually in an amateur heavy metal band. The proof of this is Z is actually wearing a t shirt that has their band name on there, and she plays a tape that has their name on there as well. Officers Lister and Landers are actually voiced by Nick Cannon and Kevin James. And finally, DJ's mother and father are voiced by Catherine O'Hara and Fred Willard. There are some fun references in this film. For instance, the tricycle scene is supposed to be an homage to The Shining. The little mechanical monkey that gets shot with a water gun is supposed to be a reference to Stephen King's Skeleton Crew, where it has that short story called The Monkey. And there's even a reference to Donnie Darko, as the costume that they put on the vacuum dummy is the same costume as one of the characters in Donnie Darko. Here's something you may or may not have noticed. On Constance's poster at the circus, it says, "The lady as big as a house," which is nice foreshadowing as she becomes the house. Apparently, Dan Harmon's original idea was to have the house actually have human organs on the inside. But to stick with that PG rating, they of course decided against that. Another thing they had to do to keep the PG rating was to show all of the people actually surviving and climbing out of the pit at the end. Now, if you can't get enough of Monster House, they did at one point actually make a video game. There's also a companion comic book which goes a little bit more into the story of Skull and Bones. So when it comes to the film Monster House, I absolutely love this movie. Anytime that a kids movie has spooky or creepy elements, I always enjoy it. So I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of the episode, what was the name of the arcade game that Skull plays in the pizza place? It is called Thou Art Dead. And if you actually want to play it yourself, if you buy the Monster House video game, they actually have a playable version of that game in the game. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there is a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.